All right. Are you able to record, Franzella?
I'm recording. Did you
Okay,
all get the notification?
All righty. Let's go, everybody. This is ending up with what is often called prehistory. We get groups of stories that were told in antiquity. People would ask, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And people tried to give answers as best as they could. The word mythology really means, how do you try to explain things in a story form that can be remembered? And one of the things you and I tend to forget is storytelling was an art form, and it is an art form. You can remember a good story. Nobody remembers a sermon. Very few people remember a lecture, a really great lecture, but you remember good stories. There's something built in about the art of a storytelling. And I remember, I mentioned to you, there are two stories that I remember from my very first year in seminary. It was fall 1967 at Union Theological Seminary. We had Gardner Taylor come in. It turns out to be, he was a very, very famous Black Baptist preacher, very progressive. And he told the story of Jonah. But the way he told that story was unlike anything I ever. He was so powerful in telling the story, you felt you were on the damn boat sinking. I mean, that's how good he was. Then we had another guy come in named George MacLeod from Scotland, another famous Scot, who wears a kilt and lace. Who wears lace? Wears lace in his neck, spoke with a banner. He rolled his R's and he told the story of Jesus and the 10 lepers. As he gets going into the story, you are absolutely convinced not only one, you were a leper, but you were there. That is storytelling. You're either on the boat as it's sinking, as Jonah's going through his stuff on the boat. And these guys were, I mean, they knew the art of storytelling. It was wild. I mean, I can remember that from more than 50 years ago. Think about that. I can remember vividly. Storytelling is an art. And so what we have is we have a group of people in Canaan who will begin to tell stories about how the world began. And you know, if you look at antiquity, you see Greek gods and you see gods before the Greek gods, Sumerian mythology, Babylonian mythology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Egyptian stuff, you know that. Our stories begin when you get exiles in Babylon. And there are two distinct groups in Babylon that want to write a history of how we got here and why. One group were a group of priests, and they were arguing that part of the problem was that the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, did not keep the correct ordinances, the correct worship, the correct sacrifices the way they were supposed to have been done, and they're being punished. The other group was called Deuteronomists, and these group believed that the laws were not followed. The laws were anchored in Jerusalem. The law giving was anchored in Jerusalem. And because Jewish people didn't follow the law, they were being punished. Both groups had in common, you were here in exile because you were being punished. They had very, very different ways of processing what and how. And then you got other information that would not go away. Other information. Stories like Moses having a wife, and his wife's father, Moses' wife's father was the high priest of Midian, a pagan, and he had kids. That story did not go away. The story married a black woman. That didn't go away either. The story about how David premeditated murder for the husband of Bathsheba, that didn't go away. There were these inconvenient stories. There were other inconvenient stories too, which I thought was a riot. Some of you may not. The famous Josiah comes in and has a major revolution in the kingdom of Judah. And it says he cleaned out the cults of prostitution in the temple. Who knew the temple had prostitution? I'm not finished. And it said he cleaned out the cults of prostitution, male and female. Yes, male prostitution in the temple in Israel. Who knew such a deal in the famous temple in Jerusalem? Yes, it was quite a thing. Yes, I mean, who knew? I mean, who knew? The famous Temple of Solomon hosts male and female prostitute. These things didn't go away. There's lots of these inconvenient pieces that don't go away. Somewhere between 500 and 250, another group of editors had before them these priestly writings, these D writings from the Deuteronomist, and all this information that would not go away, and they set about trying to make sense of it. And then you had other things that absolutely just rattled the Orthodox. How do you explain the Song of Solomon? Starts out with, I am black and I am beautiful. Yes, a black woman who's beautiful. The sun gazed upon me. And the 7th chapter of the Song of Solomon, when you're talking about a woman like a palm tree and her clusters, and how vividly erotic it is, how did you possibly fit that into Holy Writ? And let us not forget the famous comments in Ecclesiastes when they're suggesting, who knows when you die? Maybe animals go up and humans go down. We know that to be true, but anyway, I'm just saying. And by the way, I saw a neighbor today, and she was worried about her dog who's 13 and a half. And I said, at least you had the joy of having a companion that was faithful and long-lived. Most human beings don't have that. And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, she said, aren't you a minister? I said, oh, yes. And she said, well, what do you think? I said, I think that if zombies attacked, you lot would be gone in a heartbeat. Those you didn't stomp over. The only ones who would stay with me to the bitter end are my dachshunds. I said, anybody who has dogs, they will stay to you with your bitter end. Human, I wouldn't trust you lot to save my life. All right, the cat, maybe a cat. Maybe Barbara Young's shrimp would stay. Now, all right. So you got these kinds of things. And by the way, the famous comment in Ecclesiastes, are you ready for this? The race is not to the strong, nor the battle to the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor riches to the wise, but time and chance happen to them all. Whoa, how do you fit that into Holy Writ? So you get this group of editors, and nobody knows who they were, put in the very orthodox priestly writings, the very, very orthodox Deuteronomy writings, and then all these other interesting pieces that everybody wanted discarded, but they wouldn't discard them. You know, very, very uncomforting pieces of stuff. And so we come up with the Hebrew Bible. In all of this are a couple of stories that totally escaped me. Now, I'm glad this is being recorded because it's an example of how, though you may have been doing this a long time, how little you know. That would be me. You would think, after having taught courses in the Old Testament, Hebrew Bible, and you would think if after having been at this for a few decades, I would know what I'm talking about. Shrimp protected who from a snake? Are you serious? Okay, that wraps it up. There we go. I have to include cats. Okay, cats it is. You would think that I would have some knowledge of what's going on. It turns out I missed several things in the story of Noah that totally escaped me. And I bet you it escaped you too. And I can't believe, well, it's better late than never. I'm going to have a tattoo, seriously, that says it's better late than never. I'm discovering all these things in my later years of stuff that I totally missed, and I don't know how. Here are some things I wish to share with you. Noah did not save any fish. I never thought about that. Okay, last time I shared with you, and I was laughing, but I didn't get the ramifications of what I was laughing about. What do we have after everything is destroyed? Everything's dead, except this ark and Noah and his sons and wives. Now let's stop for a moment. And let's talk about, I'm going to pull something up. I'm going to share a screen here. And I want to look at this. Wait a minute. I don't know. I didn't do that right. Let me go back here. I didn't do that right. Let me do the share screen here. Okay, here we go. I want to point out something. And let's, all right. Danny's just recovering. All right, Maureen, would you want to read, since you're of this age, would you like to read this 6 and 7 here? You got on mute, Maureen. It's not coming through. Okay. Let me read it for everybody. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Do you notice Noah's wife is not mentioned by name? Interesting. Women, you should pay attention to that. Nor are the wives of the sons named. Think about that. Why is that? Why is that? Think about that for a moment. All right, moving right along here. Next chapter. By the first day of the month of Noah's 600 years, first year, the water had dried up from the earth. Noah then removed the covering from the ark, blah, blah, blah. Noah said, come out of the ark, you and your wife, no name, your sons and their wives. All right, now I want you to think about this. Next verse. So Noah came out together with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives. Now, if there are no people left on the earth, then where are you going to get babies? Think about that. It's incest. Think about that. Does that make any sense to you? You've got Noah and his wife, his sons and their wives. If they start making babies, and the babies then who have left to make children with? Are you getting what I'm saying here? This freaked me out. Are you thinking about that? Did you ever think about that? Did anybody else get that? I never got that before. Think about that. You had Noah, his wife is unmentioned. Then you have his sons, his two sons and their wives. So that means you've got 3 women. Or maybe 4. We don't know how many women, but let's start out with. Yes, and a severe genetic drift in such a small breeding population. We do know that certain small groups have big problems genetically, health-wise. That becomes a major, major issue with certain ethnic groups. All right. So I don't know if did anybody ever think about this? That is really, really scary. That means that means that you've got the 2 sons, the 3 sons, and they have wives, and their wives have kids. Well, who are their kids going to have kids with? Their cousins. Did any of you pick that up? That's the first time I ever thought about that. I should have thought about that with Adam and Eve too. And Adam and Eve had 2 sons, but there are no wives mentioned until, Maureen, you're almost there. This comes along now. Now, bear with me. The whole thing of this story of after the flood gets really, really murky. Well, it's not murky. It gets really, really intense. So what happens after the flood? Noah lets the animals run loose, which means you've got total chaos in the animal kingdom. Then he gets drunk. Now, I don't know about you, but if God, as you and I have been taught, was supposed to be the creator of everything and now knowing all stuff, why would anybody who is omniscient destroy everything and not think what's going to happen after the stuff is left? Think about that. So you say you know everything, and then what happens? What's left? You have chaos in the animal kingdom, and your hero gets drunk. It gets worse. This is another thing. I don't believe I never understood this. Now, I want to share the screen, and I want to put up something, and this is going to sound very bizarre to you all. How I got looking at this is because of this what comes next. All right. I don't know. Danny, can you read?
I think so. All right.
Okay, you're going to love this. Go ahead.
Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay.
Stop. Don't you love this? Rather than planting corn and beans and rice, he plants a vineyard. It does not tell you much about humankind. I'm sorry, Danny. Go ahead.
And he lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed by the Lord my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. May God make space for Japheth, and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. He was very long-lived. I mean, 600 and 350, that's nothing to take note of. That's over 1,000 years. I mean, it's almost 1,000 years, excuse me.
You know, even the rabbis in ancient time took this as a metaphor. They lived a long time. That's basically what it meant. All right. When I first read this, I just thought, okay, so his father's naked, and that was the taboo. That's not what it means. And you have to go to an obscure, and I mean obscure reading in the book of Leviticus. Now, I have to confess to you all, this is really embarrassing. I never paid attention to the book of Leviticus because it's filled with all these arcane laws that have nothing to do with anything, in my opinion, today. But when you do that, Kenneth, you miss things. And this is very embarrassing to tell you. I actually should have paid attention to this book because there's some things that get explained. Now, when I saw uncovered the nakedness, I thought, I can't believe I'm so dumb. I thought he was naked. It was like a taboo. You can't see your father naked. You know, it's not done. It's just, you can't do that. It's just, I thought naked, he saw his father naked, and that meant he saw his genitals and everything, and that's just, no, you can't do that. Then somebody in my class in seminary said it probably had something to do with homosexual rape of his father. Well, we didn't see that. Here is what Leviticus has to say. And this was a big shock. This is why I should pay attention to books that I don't pay attention to. All right, you ready for this? All right, I didn't share the screen. I'm sorry. I have to do that again. Sorry, I did that again. Let me share the screen. I need somebody to read. Roy, do you feel like reading?
Okay, what am I reading?
I'm going to show you. You're going to love this. All right. Now, see what the phrase uncovered means. We're in for a shock, folks. Go ahead, Roy.
No one is to approach any close relative to have sexual relationships. I am the Lord. Do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother. Do not have
Okay, wait.
relations with her.
They did that the modern way. This is not, they're not using the, hold it. We need to do it this way. That's the modern way to try to explain that. You need to see what the text is from the, that's a modern version. Hold it. Okay, uncover. Here you go. Now, Roy, read this if you would.
None of you shall approach anyone near of kin to uncover nakedness.
All right, now do you see the phrase? Stop. Uncovered nakedness. When you and I just read that Ham uncovered the nakedness of his father, I thought they took off a sheet. That's not what it means. I should have read this. I paid no attention to Leviticus. Here are definitions. Go ahead, Roy.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother.
Did you hear that? Which is the nakedness of your mother. When you say nakedness of your father, it just doesn't mean your father. It's a euphemism. And it covers a lot of stuff. And I'd have been such a smartass, I would have read Leviticus and picked this stuff out, but no, I didn't read it. And therefore, I had no idea what the text really meant. Go ahead, Roy.
You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is the nakedness of your father.
See, if you uncover the nakedness of your father, you're uncovering the nakedness of your father's wife. It's the same thing. Go ahead.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your sister, your father's daughter, or your mother's daughter, whether born at home or born abroad. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your son's daughter or of your daughter's daughter, for their nakedness is your own nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife's daughter, born in your father's house, and she is your sister. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's sister, she is your father's flesh. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, for she is your mother's flesh. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother, that is, you shall not approach his wife, she is your aunt. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law, she is your son's wife. You shall not uncover her nakedness.
Now stop. Remember, we're talking about 3 boys and their wives. They have violated everything here in Leviticus if you take the story to its logical conclusion. We're not done yet. Go ahead, Roy. You're on a roll.
You shall not uncover the nakedness of your brother's wife. It is your brother's nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter. And you shall not take her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter.
Oh,
to uncover the
yes,
nakedness.
yes.
They are
All
your
right.
flesh.
Yes, so uncover nakedness means to rape, have incest, or sex with. Now, what we just read earlier here was the modern way of how you say this in modern language. Go ahead, Roy. Start with number 7, verse 7.
Do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. She is your
Please,
mother.
stop. See, they took out the phrase "uncover the nakedness," and they translated what that really means as no longer a euphemism. What that means in modern English. Go ahead, Roy. Read some more.
Do not have sexual relations with your father's wife. That would dishonor your father. Do not have sexual relations with your sister, either your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether she was born in the same house or elsewhere. Do not have sexual relations with your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter. That would dishonor you. Do not have sexual relations.
All right. Okay. Now you see where this is going to go. Now we go back to this story. Come on, Kevin. So, and Ham, the father of Canaan, had sex with his father's wife. That's what that reads. Had sex with his father's wife, his mother, and told his 2 brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it on their shoulders and covered the nakedness, covered it. They knew that their mother had incest. Now, what amazes me is the whole story of incest and drunkenness does not stop here. Let me pull something else for you up. Again, in the book of Genesis.
Could have been his stepmom.
Either way, it's his father's property. Remember, women were
yeah.
owned. Okay, we ready? Now, go ahead, Roy. Where did you go? You're not getting out of this. Roy, you're not getting out of this. Here's some more. Okay, if you would start with verse 30.
Now Lot went up out of Zor and settled in the hills with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to stay in Zor. So he lived in a cave with his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all the world.
Now, when I read this to my students, I said, does anybody have a clue what that means? They said, no, that's why we don't read the Bible. It makes no sense. I said, it means to have sex, to have a baby. Oh, why didn't they say so? Well, I'm telling you already. They said, that's in the Bible? I said, we haven't even started yet. Go ahead, Roy.
Come, let us make our father drink wine.
Ah, stop. Yes, we're back to wine. In vino veritas. This is unbelievable. All right, go ahead. Maureen, you're turning purple.
And we
Go
will
ahead.
lie with him, so that we may preserve offspring through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she rose. On the next day, the firstborn said to the younger, Look, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, so that we may preserve offspring through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger rose and lay with him. And he did not know when she lay down or when she rose. Thus both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father.
Okay, now stop. Do you notice that we have the same issue? How are you going to populate when there's nobody to populate. Now, let me explain what this is. Lot is a cousin of Abraham. They get separated. They are new in the land of Canaan, and they're doing what immigrants always do. You're not ready to intermarry with the locals. That takes 2 or 3 generations before that happens. Now, I've been here in Miami long enough to know that I can see that when I first started teaching here, people went stuck with their own group. Anglos stuck with Anglos, Cubans stuck with Cuban Americans stuck with Cuban Americans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, having taught a quarter of a century and more than that, now when you look at students and you say to them, would any of you, if you look at your list of people that are desirable to go out with, would any of you think of your ethnic group as the first thing that's on number 1 on your list? And I get these looks. They said, are you out of your mind? And I said, no. I said, that's what they used to do. They said, no. I said, let me guess. You look for an attraction. You look for respect, trust, humor. They said, yeah. So I said, do you realize right now, and 70% of the people who live in Miami and stay in Miami marry somebody outside their tribe? Yes. And then when you do your DNA, and a lot of my students have done their DNA, they find they're not who they think they are. And that opens a lot of doors as well. Here's a story. Lot gets separated. They're brand new immigrants into the land of Canaan. The Canaanites do things very differently. They speak a different accent. They dress differently. They smell differently. You're now in the land. You're not ready to intermarry and interbreed. Lot's daughters are breedable. You have to what? Populate the group by babies. So this was originally, don't laugh at me now, this was originally a story of heroism. The supreme sacrifice to keep the tribe populated, to keep it was to sacrifice and do the ultimate, to even have to go to have incest, to have a baby of our group. Now, the priests in Babylon, hearing this story, are absolutely appalled. This story is probably first written down about 900 or so BCE. It'd been out there for Lord knows how long, hundreds of years. By the time you're in Babylon in 500 BCE, hundreds of years have gone by. This is an embarrassment. So the priests can't get rid of this. So they added on number 37 and 38. Roy, can you read 37 and 38?
As soon as I finish chewing. The first bore a son and named him Moab. He is the ancestor of the Moabites to this day. The younger also bore a son and named him Ben-Ami. He is the ancestor of the Ammonites to this day.
Okay, so what they did is they added 2 sentences saying our hated enemies were the reason got going because of incest. So they put this thing about Moab. The fools forgot that King David, whom they loved and adored, was 1/4 Moabite. Lovely. And they also forgot the Ammonites, the Syrians. The Ammonites are Syrians. The Moabites would be Jordan and Northern Arabia. So what they were doing is they quickly had to make some sense of this. So they said, yes, this happened, but look what the result was. Of course, it's a lie. Moab had nothing to do with this, and no to the Ammonites, but this was their way of saying, see, our hated enemies. Now you know how come they're so bad, because look how they started, incest. But what amazes me is how we have this constant theme of drunkenness, constant theme of how do you repopulate, and then you have a constant theme of incest. Now, it never dawned on me, what do? You have nobody left. You've got Noah, his wife, and his daughter-in-laws. They will wind up bearing children. Yeah, they added a condemnation of behavior afterwards, long after it happened. But here's what you do. Think about this. All right. We are all that's left. Let's say we're all in our 20s. We are all that's left because of a plague and a nuclear war, accessories after the fact. Yeah, we are left, and this is it. What would you do? would you say, and this is serious, what would you do? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 males and a bunch of females. What would you say? Do you go about procreating or not? Now, this happened, by the way, on the American frontier. I don't know if you remember when I read that from the last week, but there was a, hold on a minute, let me get it. There was a book. Oh, Kenneth, what did you do? There is a very interesting book called Pilgrims in Their Own Land. And this guy writes about an Anglican minister in the western part of Virginia. Now, at this point, Barbara Young is going to say, be careful about what you say about Western Virginia. Let me point out, this is long before Barbara Young was part of Western Virginia. What? Unmute, what?
It's southwestern Virginia.
Okay, you're
West Virginia is and there's southwestern Virginia.
okay. That's where you're from,
So-
southwestern Virginia. Okay,
Southwestern.
okay, you escaped this then. Your heritage
Sort of.
escaped this, sort of. All right. All right, so Charles Woodmason from England goes to Virginia and goes to the wilds of Virginia. This is 1760s, everybody, in the United States. And he saw a need for religion there where 94% of the women whose marriages he oversaw were pregnant, where venereal disease was universal, polygamy is common, and having lots of children by many people was no disrespect whatsoever. In short, people did what they had to do, and they had children all over the place with as many people, and et cetera, and et cetera, and et cetera. So the idea of when you're in a small area and you've only got a few people, what do? Now, I'm not excusing this. I'm just trying to say it's interesting that in this prehistory, oh, yeah, rape and forced pregnancy, obviously. And so what do? And it's interesting, in prehistory, both stories in Genesis revolve around drunkenness and incest. So here's the thing, here's gets really weird. Let me put this other thing, which now nobody can make sense of this. Let's see. Nope, that's not what we want. Get out of that one. Okay, let me go share screen. Since wise, Leviticus. Okay, let's go to documents. And we want to go to all right, when Danny Sorkin read this, Danny read the following. Now see if you follow this. Who was the one who slept with his mother? And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers. The nakedness of his father is a euphemism for his mother, a euphemism. All right? He saw. That means he slept with her, his mother. Now look, Ham is the one who did this, but look who gets cursed. Follow this. Ham does not get cursed. Why? When Noah woke, he knew what his youngest had done to him. This means that by sleeping with his father's wife, he now becomes head of the group. What happens, stop for a moment. What happens when you conquer another city? The first thing you do is take over the dead king's harem. And you sleep with the number one in the harem to prove that you are in charge. Isn't that right? Well, think about that. Did you not know that? In antiquity, the way you showed the way this happened, by the way, when David died. When David died, there was a big, big deal about who took over after David died. And one of the people went in and slept with the head of David's harem before he died, which was considered a taboo. So the idea then of once you have slept with the head's wife, the person is no longer a head. So that means Ham takes over the role of being macho man of those few that are left. So so that's why you can't curse him, because he is number one. He's the alpha male. So look at this. Look and see who gets cursed. Where are we? Yes.
Lions do this too. When male lions take over a pride, they kill the previous male lions, and then they immediately impregnate all the lionesses.
Right. That's the take over. So look, that's right. This is the same thing. And Ham, the father of Canaan, slept with his father's wife. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son he did, he said, "Cursed be Canaan." He can't curse Ham because Ham is now in charge. So in fact, he curses his grandson, which makes no sense whatsoever. Unless, of course, you're trying to realize what the priests are doing here. Cursed be Canaan, lowest of the slaves shall be his brothers. Let Canaan be his slave. What the
And
priest,
those were considered black people, right? The ones that had the Ham's curse were black.
no Ham, no, that's Cush. Cush. No, what happened is the priests are trying to pull an ethnicity here. They're trying to deny they're Canaanite. They are living under the illusion that there was this enormous army that had a three-pronged attack into the land of Canaan. That was the story that was passed down, that Joshua came into the land of Canaan with a three-pronged attack, drove out the Canaanites, and now Canaan was repopulated totally by the people from the exile, from the Exodus. In fact, we knew that never happened. In fact, when the Israelis went digging in 1948, they found that the overwhelming DNA and everything else was all Canaanite. All Canaanite. What the priests were doing were showing total ignorance of their background. And by the way, that shouldn't surprise anyone. All right, Daniel, see you later. See you later. Okay. What the priests were doing was doing what a lot of people doing. They're absolutely denying their background. Now, I will not mention the ethnic group involved, but I see this with students who come from a couple of ethnic groups in Miami, and they are absolutely up there. There is a history of where they live of being looking down at and making bad commentary of blacks who were once upon a time slaves where they live. Then they do their DNA and they find out that 25% of their DNA is from Africa. And they are absolutely dumbfounded how they could possibly be like this. So your professor has to suggest to them history, migration patterns, and moments, as I call them. And from the results of moments, babies arrive. And so I said, the thing about having your DNA, it reminds you that you're not who you think you are. Now, some of you may remember Carol Ryder. Carol Ryder said, and I love this, hello, Holly Duck, my cousin. There she is. Carol Ryder said, when you get a birth certificate, they ought to make your DNA attached to it so you can't rip it apart, so you can see where you actually come from. Because a lot of people are very, very shocked. They just upgraded my DNA. And of course, I have Native American, but I also have Andes. 12% is Andes, ancient Andes. AJ has to go too. All right, AJ, we'll catch up with you guys. All right, bye-bye. I have Andean. I also have, are you ready for this? Inuit, 3% Inuit. and I have some Balkan. I have no idea where the Balkans came from, the Andean or the Inuit, but if you have Native American, my guess is, since the latest studies show that people came over here, the Bering landmass is not what we thought. It was huge. Once upon a time, that little landmass we thought was not little. It was an enormous area. And so now they're arguing that when people came down here, they first came along the coast. So you're going to understand Inuit up there where the Bering huge landmass used to be. They came across the coast 20,000 to 25,000 years ago, much, much earlier than we thought. They've discovered wall paintings in Colombia that's 20,000 years old, made with ochre. It's beautiful. They found this hidden valley and this whole wall, a mile long, with unbelievable ochre paintings. And they carbon dated it to 20,000 years ago. What you and I were taught, yeah, it was the last group that comes in, but other groups had already been. They've discovered bones in the Amazon, Homo sapien bones dating 18 to 20,000 years. Hello. I mean, they didn't fly in, folks. They didn't parachute in. So everything that you and I have been taught is out the window. And so that means if you've got any Native American in you, that means it goes back much, 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 much further than you thought. Now, if you think about that, Scotty transported, yeah. So what I'm saying is you look at your you look at your DNA and you're going to find that you are a lot more than what you think, than what you thought. Now, my students enjoy this to no end. Their parents and grandparents do not. One of my students, and I've told you this before because it was so, it's a classic example. Look at Franzella's face there. Imagine Franzella with a lot of freckles on each side of her nose. See the hair? Franzella with freckles looks about as Irish as you're going to get. Looks like she's County Cork. One of my students was of a certain ethnic group and wanted to know how she could possibly wind up 20% Irish. And I said, if you ever stood Irish history, they rebelled against the nasty English Protestants every 50 years like clockwork, and they lost. Except the nobility were given free transport to France and Spain, good Catholic countries, to give that nobility freedom. And guess where a lot of them went to? Spain. And guess where a lot of those Spanish expatriates, those Irish expatriates went after Spain? They went to Cuba, where it was nice and warm. So you get a lot of Cuban American students who have freckles and red hair, and they said, and green eyes, and they say, we're Cuban, and everybody says, no, you're not. And they do their DNA, they find they're 20% Irish, and they don't know why. We are the results, whether we like it or not, of a lot of backgrounds and a lot of breeding. Some because of love and some because of forced. And you and I will never know who's which, but we are the end results of what we are. Now, in a week from Monday, my classes will meet and we'll go through this again. And we're going to find out that my classes have anywhere between 28 and 42 countries represented. The lowest is 28, the most is 42. By the time everybody puts up their DNA, their great-great-grandparents and everything else, and then everybody is shocked to see the widespread. We go everywhere. Every time we meet, we go lots of Chinese, lots of Southeast Asians. That shocks everybody. Lots of African. Where in Africa? Hello, Senegal. It's on the coast. Nigeria, the famous Fons and Yoruba tribes that brought slaves to this country. Nigeria, Senegal, Mali, the famous Timbuktu trading. Morocco, of course. Morocco in Northern Europe and in Southern Europe, and we go on and on and on and on. So I'm just saying to you that all of this adds up. And what we're getting is the priests were trying to deny their ancestry. So they denied their Moabite ancestry. They denied their Ammonite ancestry by making fun of it and by saying it was a result of incest. And they said that that Canaan, well, really wasn't Canaan one where there was cursed and they deserved to be obliterated from the face of the earth. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Somebody just put they were Ashkenazi Jewish. Who was that? All right, that people people meet. People meet and they fall in love. Now, Roy, did you ever do your DNA?
Yeah, mine came up like 98% Ashkenazi Jewish and 2% Middle Eastern.
But what kind of Middle Eastern?
I think it was around what's now Iran, and I think that
But that was non-Jewish.
yeah, it didn't come up as anything but of that region.
Okay, what about your wife? Did she do her DNA?
I think so, and I think it was similar to mine.
All right. Persian, ancient Persian then. Do you remember the map we pulled up, the Amana culture and all the places those people went? The Amana culture 5,000 years ago invented the wheel, tamed the horse, and they went everywhere. Remember that map I showed you? And everybody went everywhere. And you find quote unquote Persian stuff all over the place, including even moving into the Arapa culture, bringing in with their own mythologies. And what you have is Hinduism is a magnificent blending of people moving in from the West and indigenous ideas coming together. And the result of that blending will be what we call now Hinduism.
Well, I just found it and I misspoke. If I could share the screen, I would share it with y'all. But it says 93.9% Ashkenazi Jewish, 4.6% West Asian, and 1.5% Sephardic Jewish, Northern Africa.
Okay, Northern Africa is not Northern Europe. I mean, those are two very, very different cultures of Judaism. Sephardic is not Ashkenazi. And in Israel, they don't get along well at all. And you've got West Asian.
West Asian, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Iran, Iraq.
Wow. Okay. So there you go. It shows you, and what you're seeing here with the priest in Babylon is trying to deny their DNA. So I don't know about you. I was fascinated to realize that this is why you don't take the Bible literally. A classic example would be if you looked at this and everybody's wiped out, you get what? You get Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their wives, and that's it. Following that logical conclusion, that means the world is populated by first cousins having sex with first cousins, and you know what that means. So obviously it is a story the same way as you get Cain and Abel. By the way, the Book of Jubilees, has any of you ever heard the Book of Jubilees? The Book of Jubilees is a companion. It's not in the Bible, but it is a story. And let me read you this. Jubilees is an attempt to give names to people that don't have names in the Hebrew Bible. Jubilees makes an incestuous reference regarding the son of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. It says that Cain took his sister. Bet you didn't know he had a sister. Cain took his sister Awan to be his wife, and Enoch was their child. It also mentions that Seth married his sister Azurah. The Book of Jubilees. So you get Genesis talking about incest, and you get mentioning this in Lot. You get the implication in Noah, and then you get it in the Book of Jubilees. And I never picked this up anywhere. Absolutely never picked this up anywhere. Anywhere. According to various Abrahamic traditions, Awan from Hebrew means iniquity or vice, was the wife and sister of Cain, the daughter of Adam and Eve. The Book of Jubilees says she is called Awan, and she is similarly, her sister was the wife of Cain's 2 brothers, Abel, and after Abel's murder, Seth. So that means we've got in the Book of Jubilees, in the story of Lot and his daughters, in the story of Noah and his wife and his daughters and sons, drunkenness and incest, and I missed it all. How could I, of all people, miss this? I mean, this is where our original telenovelas begin. Right here. Right here. Do you think telenovelas were new? No, they go back to prehistory. I never picked this up. Did any of you ever see this in Genesis? Did anybody else get this? No, nobody else got it either. Okay, I don't feel too badly then. All right, where we go from here? All right, Franzella, if you would be kind enough to stop recording and let this people think about this then. Some suggestions then about what you do for the